Hello guys, so welcome back to one more interesting discussion about this session today by motivational monetary fundas. And आज के session में we'll be talking about markets in general, right? That how are the markets performing, like what is the future market outlook based upon different macros. Also, we'll be trying to understand and talk about the different sectors from the earnings point of view. And also, we shall be discussing about different spaces from the market cap breakdown point of view. That specifically, we'll be trying to talk about the large cap space, the mid cap space, and the small cap space as well. And on the sidelines, we also shall be discussing about the market macros, right? So, हम discussion start करेंगे from the Indian markets because Indian markets being our home markets, some other markets. And ideally, the discussion will be much more towards being centered around talking about the earnings growth, the future forecast based upon the Q4 FY25 earnings, the Q4 FY25 earnings, by the last fiscal year that we had, right? And based upon the previous fiscal year earnings, what earnings can we project for the future as well? Correct. So, अगर हम इंडियन मार्केट की बात करें, right? If I try to talk about the Indian markets, I'll be sharing my screen as well with you, right? So, अगर हम numbers की बात करें, right? And if particularly we try to talk about the macro data, right? हमारे पास macro data के numbers भी आए हैं. And again, the biggest macro indicator up to my knowledge, if I talk about, is the GDP of the country, the gross domestic product, right? Now, what exactly is the GDP? Now, here, the gross domestic product or the GDP of the country, it talks about the market value of the goods and services being produced in the economy. It takes into account the consumption, it takes into account the investment, it takes into account the government expenditure and also the net exports. For all of those who want to understand that what exactly is the GDP in a deep dive way, go back to my YouTube videos. You have a deep dive session which makes you understand what exactly is GDP. And also we have tried to understand and analyze the different components of GDP, right? So again, that's a discussion which you guys can go forward for. But GDP, अगर मैं मोटा मोटा बोलूं, it's the market value of the goods and services being produced in the economy, which takes into account consumption, investment, the government expenditure, and the net exports. The GDP growth, right? And here I'm talking about the real GDP growth. The real GDP growth on a quarter-on-quarter basis has been 7.4%. It has beaten all the estimates. Thus, one company was closer to it, around like 7.5%, and that was JP Morgan Chase and Company. Apart from that, many of the companies, or 98% of the companies, projected between 6.5 to 6.8. And again, the future guidance for GDP has been revised upwards from 6.3% to 6.5%. And that number is on a yearly basis. The 7.4% is quarter on quarter. So quarter on quarter, we are receiving much more growth in terms of the gross domestic product, right? So basically, we can say that maybe the components of GDP, that all the four components जिनकी हमने बात करी, that we talked about, consumption, investment, government expenditure, the net exports are reviving, right? And all these components have been reviving as well. If we talk about GDP, 60% of GDP can be attributed to consumption, or the GDP has a 60% weightage of consumption. Consumption contributes the maximum towards the whole GDP number, and consumption has started to revive. We faced problems towards the rural consumption in the previous quarters, but again, the rural consumption has started to revive, and that we can witness by early monsoon, good crops, good income in the hands of farmers and many people on the rural side, tractor sales, right? Fertilizer sales, crop production. Because whenever we see the sales of tractors rising, sale of fertilizers rising, ultimately that ultimately it basically we can sense it out from that motto is that the farm income is reviving, right? The farm output is coming back, right? The sales in two-wheelers have been stagnant from previous two quarters. We are seeing very low single-digit growth coming back in the two-wheeler space as well. The problem was coming up with the urban consumption, and that is still a problem, right? But many of the FMCGs contribute or get more than 55% of their income from the rural side and approximately 40 to 45 from the urban side. So now this rural side has started to revive, and we can say there can be a growth in the upcoming quarters for the urban side as well. FMCG's top line, that is revenue, has been consolidating from past 5 to 10 years. They haven't seen growth. Their earning growth has been negative. The quarter-on-quarter growth for the FY25, the Q4 for the FY25 has been negative for the FMCG sector, right? But the expectation is the demand will come back from the urban side as well in the upcoming quarters. Investment is coming back. The government has started to do its investments back, right? In the previous quarter, in the first half of the year, like it was all about elections and different things. So usually in the first half of the year, the governments generally tend to incur around approximately 66% of the fiscal deficit. But they just incurred around like 35 to 40% of the fiscal deficit. Remaining everything was incurred in the second half or the first half of this calendar year, which makes it the last quarter of the previous fiscal year, right? But the private expenditure or the private expenditure again remains a concern. So private expenditure is also bound to come back in the upcoming quarters because the government is almost coming up to the brim and the private capex has to come in because private capex is always follows the government capex or the public capex, right? The government expenditure is there, right? So no question about that. Also, our exports are rising. So currently, our global exports is 12% of GDP. Our current exports is 12% of GDP, approximately. It's poised to grow to 25% of GDP by 2030, right? So our exports are bound to grow by 25% of GDP by 2030, and that is the expectation. Interest rates have come down by 50 basis point from 6% to from 6 point, right? So it came down from 6% to 5.5%. 50 basis point, the repo rate has come down. There is an equal tranche cut of CRR from 4% to 3%. Tranche by tranche, four times by 25 basis points. So by September, they will start, and by November, they will have to cut down the CRR. And that is a cash reserve ratio, which the commercial banks have to keep up with the central banks, which suck up the liquidity in the market. Correct? So that is coming down from 4% to 3%. So ultimately stimulating more liquidity in the market. More money shall be circulating, and that will stimulate much more demand and stimulate much more consumption. And here where the private consumption or the urban consumption can come up to fulfill that gap of the consumption parameter in the GDP. GDP ka number is 7.4%. Again, it is being aided by the private final consumption expenditure, exhibiting a robust growth by 7.2%. The gross fixed capital formation, exhibiting a robust growth by 7.1%. So private final consumption expenditure is basically telling you the amount of consumption by the households like you and me is rising and rising and rising. So it tends to take into account both the rural as well as the urban private consumption expenditure. एंड द ग्रॉस फिक्स कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन बता रहा है कि जितनी भी इकोनॉमी में एक्सपेंडिचर हो रहा है, फिक्स कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर हो रहा है, हाउ मच वैल्यू एडेड इज देयर इन द इकोनॉमी. जो खर्चा गवर्नमेंट कर रही है उससे वैल्यू ऐड हो भी रहा है या नहीं, राइट? सो वट एवर एक्सपेंडिचर द गवर्नमेंट इज इनकरिंग, इज इट एडिंग वैल्यू इन द इकोनॉमी? Is it creating jobs? Is it creating employment, services, income, consumption? Because everything is being linked to the gross fixed capital formation. Again, that is also rising. If the gross fixed capital formation is rising, that indicates value addition in the economy. It indicates productivity in the economy. There can be situations in which the capex is there. There can be situations in which both the public capex as well as the private capex is there. ऐसी situations market में हो सकती हैं कि private capex भी है and public capex भी है, right? But the gross fixed capital formation might not be rising. There can be such situations. The government capex is also there and the private capex is also there. But the gross fixed capital formation, GFCF, might not rise. It means कि फालतू खर्चे हो रहे हैं, कि पैसा तो लग रहा है but output generate नहीं हो रहा. But if a GFCF is rising year on year, quarter on quarter, and this above 6% number is very good for the economy, right? Apart from these parameters, if we talk about apart from these parameters, अगर हम देखें, correct, our GST collections have been really good. I have the latest GST numbers also with me. Again, the GST collections have been really good. In May, it was more than 2.1 lakh crores, right? RBI dividend to central government approximately 2.6 lakh crores, right? Our manufacturing PMI, though it has come down from 58.6 to like 57.6, but again, more than 45 ka number or more than 50 ka number is really very strong. Quarter on quarter fluctuations can be there, right? But again, that number is really very strong. Our IIP, Index of Industrial Production, now it has slowed down to 2.7% on year basis, But again, a number more than 1.5% is very strong. So purchasers, managers index PMI more than 50, that is 57.6 as of now. The index of industrial production, IIP, more than 2.5% as of now. All these numbers being coupled with our export target from increasing it from 12% to 25% of GDP by 2030, the interest rates coming down, consumption reviving, GDP going up, GST collections going up, fiscal deficit target coming closer to 4.2% of GDP. We are at current account deficit of 1% of GDP from more than 3% in the previous years. And again, in the coming quarters, it is expected to be a current account surplus or a break even. So all these parameters being coupled up with low inflation of 3.14% as of now, right, is ultimately stating us that the macro conditions of India are very stable. There are many countries, both from the developing side as well as the emerging sides, whose macro conditions are unstable. So we have won the macro war. Now the time is to understand the micro conditions, right? We have already won the macro war, right? If all these things sustain, all these things continue in the economy, that boom period continues, right? And also one more thing, we have no fear of recession. Our yield curve is a rising yield curve. The yield curve on a longer duration fixed income securities are much higher than a shorter duration fixed income securities. तो कहीं से भी कोई भी बड़ा रिस्क नहीं है. We have seen the tariff war. Again, everything will get priced in because India just exports 2% of GDP to US. So there won't be such impact. 12% globally and 2% of our GDP worth of goods are exported to US. So not much impact. We have seen the Pakistani tensions come to normal. This COVID J1 virus has come into place, but again, it is proving out to be less dangerous. The number of deaths are very less, though I believe कि deaths एक भी नहीं होनी चाहिए, like सब कुछ ठीक रहे. But this variant will ultimately prove to be less hazardous, right? Because everything is getting priced in because the market tends to discount the future projections, the future cash flows, the future news, right? So all this the market tends to discount by the different kinds of mental models or financial modeling and valuation models. So everything has been priced in. Now here I do not mean that there will be no correction. Corrections might be there. Healthy corrections will be there. Definitely will be there. But there's no expectation of a crash. Healthy corrections are always good, guys. You buy at dips, you get good prices, you get good opportunities to buy maybe a mid cap stock or a small cap stock because large caps they generally tend to be much more stable. So these dips, which are much more in quantum, much more in terms of percentage for mid cap and small cap stocks, and also for micro cap space, because again that space is also rising because many of the micro cap stocks are under researched, and many stocks are booming up now in the micro cap space, which are fundamentally strong, right? So the market got corrected more than 15% not for large cap from September 24 onwards, more than 20% not for mid caps, more than 25-30% not for small caps. And now the market started to come back again. And we're almost closer to September highs now. We have been talking about that the large cap is fairly valued by large cap, by Nifty 50, which is the index comprising of top 50 market cap companies, sell off the mid cap index, the Nifty 150 mid cap index, sell off the small cap index, the Nifty 250 small cap index. But one thing that we're ignoring is we're almost closer to the September valuations now, be it for large cap, be it for mid cap, be it for small cap. But one thing that we are not trying to understand is the large cap valuations are crossing the 10-year average valuations now. The 10-year price to earning multiple, the 10-year average price to earning multiple for Nifty 50 as an index is 20.6, 20.7. It's trading at a 1-year forward multiple of 21.8. Average 10 साल का 20.7, 20.6 है. But 1-year forward price to earning multiple is trading at 21.8 times. So large cap is not fairly valued now. Mid cap and small cap तो पहले भी नहीं थे. But those who are shouting in the market कि यार अब large cap low, large cap low, large cap low, they're fairly valued. They're off those highs. They're not fairly valued now. Some individual stocks and spaces might be, or they are, but as an index in totality, या 50 कंपनीज तो हैं बस, right? कौन सा 100-200 कंपनीज है, कौन सा BSE 1000 का इंडेक्स है, right? So ultimately, that's above the fair valuations now. On a trailing basis also, on a forward basis also, right? And same for mid cap and small cap. But the only thing on which a fund manager or maybe a person like me or maybe someone in the market who has the knowledge about investments, 1%, 2%, right? The only reason one can defend the mid cap and small cap is they came much faster on track vis-a-vis the large cap from the September 24 onwards. Correction, again, not a crash, and their earning growth is supporting the price. The basic principle of valuations. The pricing or the valuation should support earning growth. The valuations of a stock or a price of a stock should support earning growth. I agree. Till the previous fiscal before September onwards, or before like 1 year, I would say like approximately 1 year before, the valuations were supported by the earning growth of mid cap and small cap. From the last year onwards, the earnings of large cap came down, small cap and mid cap also came down. But the quantum by which the large cap earnings came down was very high. It came down to a lower single digit, like 2 to 3% for IT industries, 7 to 8% for banking space. But for mid cap and small cap, there was still around 14 to 15%. Earnings coming down from 33%, 40%. From that quantum, they came down to 14%, 15%, much more than large cap. And again, the valuations also came down to that extent now. The quantum by which the valuations for mid cap and small cap came down was much higher versus the quantum of which the valuations came down for the Nifty 50 index. Why? There is earning growth in mid cap and small cap. I'm completely agreeing. I'm not denying the fact that the earning growth have not come down. The earning growth have come down, but the quantum of the earning growth has come down less for the mid cap and small cap space, the Nifty 150 mid cap index or Nifty 250 small cap index. So the earnings are there, the prices are coming down. The price to earning multiple, as we talk about, it takes into account the current price in the numerator, which is a leading indicator of the economy, and the EPS, the earning per share, in the denominator. Correct. So your price has come down, but your earnings are still rising. And that is why the magnitude by which the valuations of the mid cap and small cap companies is coming down is high. तो earnings जो है mid cap small cap में boss, earnings हैं, वहां पैसा बनने वाला है. Many of the companies towards the industrial space, I'm telling about the high growth themes for future, which will make money. We talk about na that China was in a 10-year, 12-year decade. India has entered the same decade. And the sectors which can bound to do well are your EMS space, electronic manufacturing services, capital goods scheme, industrial companies, healthcare services, correct? But your consumer tech kind of companies, consumer discretionary companies supporting the themes of urbanization. China plus one themes में आ जाता है, like ये सब basically your chemicals, your specialized chemicals, not petrochemicals, but specialized chemicals and chemicals. Not automobiles, but auto ancillaries, right? Who make the auto equipments. But telecom can do good. So all these things were capital market space, much towards the asset management companies or brokerage companies who can financialize savings. Because in India, just 4% of the savings get channelized to equities. In US, it is more than 50%. In India, we have 7 hospital beds per 10,000 people. In countries like Russia, it is more than 70. ARPU in India is around 2.5 per USD. In US, UK, it's more than 40 to 50. So again, all these themes are bound to grow well. And the majority of these themes are present in the mid cap and small cap space, especially mid cap. So mid cap में तो पैसा बनना है, right? If I just give you one data point, from FY19 to FY24, so that's the past जो पास में हो गया, right? अब बहुत लोग बोलेंगे पास में जो हो गया है ना, तो लाइक हमको कुछ मतलब नहीं, बट मतलब होना चाहिए. FY19 to FY24, the Nifty 50 index, FY19 to FY24, Nifty 50 EPS CAGR. EPS is the proxy for profit. If profit will rise, EPS will rise. Your EPS CAGR grew by 20%. For the same time period, FY19 to FY24, Nifty 150 mid cap index, EPS CAGR grew by 40%. And for the same time period, Nifty 250 small cap, EPS CAGR grew by 30%. So 20% for Nifty 50 index, 40% for Nifty 150 mid cap index, and 30% for Nifty 250 small cap index. Let's try to understand the projections. From FY25 to FY28 expectation, Nifty 50's EPS CAGR is expected to grow just at 10%. And that is why every analyst, every fund manager is saying यार कि Nifty 50 अगर 10 to 12% से भी grow कर जाता है इस साल तो बहुत बड़ी बात है. Nifty 150 mid cap index, FY25 to FY28 expectation expected to grow by 20.5%. And the Nifty 50 to 50 small cap index expected to grow by 17%. It means earnings mid cap में तो हैं, small cap में भी हैं, but large cap से ज्यादा है. So it might happen, instead of you can put your money into an index, also you can pick up specific stocks, right? मेरे पास एक रिपोर्ट है, राइट? अगेन लाइक दिस इज बीइंग पब्लिश बाय मोतीलाल ओसवाल फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज, ये अपना एक रिपोर्ट पब्लिश करता है, एज ऑफ मई में आती है ये मोस्टली, ठीक है? तो यहाँ पे अगर तुम देखोगे ना, बहुत अच्छे नंबर्स आते हैं, बहुत ही बढ़िया नंबर्स मिलेंगे इस रिपोर्ट में तुमको, पूरी दुनिया के बारे में, पूरी दुनिया भर में क्या हो रहा है, राइट? सो एवरीथिंग यू विल गेट टू नो, राइट? सो इफ वी सी द ग्लोबल मार्केट कैप हैज रिजन बाय 10.3%, currently $12 trillion as of now, and India's market cap has increased by 12.1% over past 1 year. Still they are saying that India is not doing good. यार 12.1% से मार्केट कैप बढ़ी है. निफ्टी की अर्निंग्स हैज बीन जस्ट 5 to 6%. मार्केट कैप has risen much more than Nifty's earning. It means earnings has to come back, earning has to grow, and this 12.1% is the long term your 10-year CAGR of Nifty 50. इतने से अगर एक साल में ग्रो कर रहा है, द अर्निंग्स हैव टू कम बैक टू 12%, एंड दैट इज वे देर एक्सपेक्टिंग कि 10 to 12% की अर्निंग ग्रोथ होंगी इन द कमिंग 3 to 4 years ऑन अ CAGR बेसिस. इट मेक सेंस, राइट? सबसे ज्यादा चेंज जर्मनी में आया है, देन चाइना में आया है, यूएस में आया है, इंडिया में भी आया है. लार्जेस्ट चेंज हैज बीन इन जर्मनी, 21% इंक्रीज इन मार्केट कैप. China 14% increase in market cap. US 12%, India almost same. US market and Indian markets are going hand in hand. The price to earning multiples are almost at same. Your MSCI India is trading at a price to earning multiple of 22 times. MSCI India. Your MSCI emerging market index is trading at a price to earning multiple of same 22x. But MSCI India is exhibiting much higher growth as compared to the MSCI emerging market index. That's the difference. Valuation should be justified by growth. Multiples should be justified by growth. ऐसा नहीं है कि यार अगर हमें अंडर वैल्यूड स्टॉक नहीं मिलेगा, वैल्यू थीम नहीं मिलेगा, वैल्यू फैक्टर नहीं मिलेगा, वी वोंट बी डूइंग इन्वेस्टिंग. There are some big guys who talked about यार कि वैल्यू ही स्टॉक होना चाहिए. But those were some things that used to happen in the past. Those principles were prevalent in the past that might not work as of now. Market change, dynamics change, right? So principles भी change होते हैं time के साथ. Correct. I'll show you one more important data point. If you see, maybe I can just share this file with you. You guys can ping me. Past 12 months की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं. ठीक है, ये जो डेटा है तुम्हारे सामने है is as of May 31st 2025. It says during last 12 months, large caps and mid caps have gained 10% and 11%. As of 31st of March, large cap was like 5.8% odd and mid cap was like around 7% odd. ठीक है, बट मई को करके अकाउंट में, अप्रैल का पूरा महीना एंड मई को करके 10% फॉर लार्ज कैप्स एंड लाइक 11% फॉर मिड कैप्स, आउट परफॉर्मिंग स्मॉल कैप्स बाय 7%, आउट परफॉर्मिंग स्मॉल कैप्स विच हैव जस्ट रिजन बाय 7%. 12 महीने से कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Over last 5 years, mid caps have outperformed large caps by 175%, and the small caps have outperformed large caps by 189%. Very great number, right? Nifty valuations है 20.7 का 10 year average रहा है, currently is trading at 21.2, right? And अगर हम प्राइस टू बुक वैल्यू के बेसिस पे देखें, इट्स मच मोर हायर, right? On a price to earning basis, it is trading at a 3% premium. But on a price to book value basis, Nifty 50 ka index is trading at how much premium? 12% premium. Historical tenure has been 2.8 times, but currently the price to book value multiple is 3.2 times. Many people tend to ask me the question that sometimes if you look at the price to earning multiple, the valuations are fairly valued or closer to fair valuation. But when we look towards the price to book value multiple, valuations tend to be overvalued, or the percentage by which the number is overvalued is high as compared to price to earning. Why? See, the logic is that we tend to focus upon earnings. हम earnings देखते हैं, earnings important है, but we should not ignore price to book value. Price to book value can provide you a much more realistic measure than price to earning, right? Nifty 50 के cases में if you see 33-35% or is the BFSI space, the banking, financial services, insurance space. For those type of companies, you only use price to book value and never price to earning. कोई भी अगर मार्केट में तुमको मिले जो बीएफएसआई स्पेस के लिए प्राइस टू अर्निंग यूज कर रहा है, ही इज अ फूल। सिंपली उसकी बात पे ध्यान मत देना। उसको मार्केट के बारे में नहीं पता, उसको वैल्यूएशंस के बारे में नहीं पता, उसको अर्निंग्स के बारे में नहीं पता। BFSI space के लिए every time we use price to book value. Why? Because the book value. How does a bank make money? It takes loan and lends loan. Loans are the book value. Bank का crux, bank का raw material is debt, right? Is the book value of loans. And ultimately, the book value of the loans has to be adjusted against the provisions, right? The book value of the loans have to be adjusted against the provisions. करेक्ट। सो वो भी एडजस्टमेंट इंपॉर्टेंट होती है। बिकॉज बैंक में आर बुक वैल्यू इज द एसेट माइनस लाइबिलिटीज। एसेट माइनस लाइबिलिटीज इज द शेयर होल्डर्स इक्विटी। एंड कंपनी जितना भी प्रॉफिट कमाएगी, मैं बीएफएसआई स्पेस की बात कर रहा हूँ, दैट विल गेट एडेड टू द शेयर होल्डर्स वेल्थ। करेक्ट। अपना जो कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इनकम है फॉर दोज फॉर द स्टूडेंट्स ऑफ फाइनेंस जो मेरे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं बहुत टाइम से, तो कंपनी जितना भी प्रॉफिट कमाती है, दैट दैट गोज टू द रिटेन्ड अर्निंग्स, दैट गेट्स एडेड टू द शेयर होल्डर्स इक्विटी, राइट। एंड अल्टीमेटली जितना प्रॉफिट कमाएगी उतना कंपनी का ROE विल ऑल्सो राइज, राइट, द रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी। फॉर बैंक्स वी यूज ROE एंड नॉट ROCE। उसका लॉजिक भी मैंने बात करी हुई बहुत बारी, राइट। सो if your ROE is rising by 10%, again the bank can lend by 10% approximately. जितने ग्रोथ से उसका प्रॉफिट बढ़ रहा है, जितनी रेट से इट्स ROE is rising, the bank can also lend higher, and ultimately the operating leverage will kick in. करेक्ट। तो दैट इज द थिंग, बैंक्स में हम प्राइस टू अर्निंग यूज कर ही नहीं सकते। हैवी इंडस्ट्रीज में भी प्राइस टू अर्निंग कैन बी मिसलीडिंग। यूजुअली when we are using a price to earning ratio, we will buy a heavy industrial company when the price to earning ratio is low and sell when the price to earning ratio is high. But that is wrong. For heavy companies, heavy industrial companies, real estate companies, chemical companies, metal companies, or basically your cyclical companies, you should buy when the price to earning is high. Yes, you should buy when the price to earning is high and sell when the price to earning is low. उनमें लॉजिक उल्टा चलता है, द लॉजिक इज रिवर्स्ड। बिकॉज when the price to earnings for a cyclical industry is low, it means the earnings have reached peak already. Earnings have reached the peak already. Your EPS is very high. You are investing at the end of the cycle. Now it will reverse. There might be 4 to 5 years with no gains. The sector might correct a lot, right? तो price to earnings जब कम होता है, we as full investors are buying the cyclical industries as at that particular point of time, right? The earnings have reached the peak. It is not like the other non-cyclical industries where the earnings are quite decent or they come down very quickly. ये cyclical industries हैं, that usually volatile industries. Based upon price to earning, the cyclical industry stock is appearing cheap. तुमने उस टाइम पे कर दिया उसको, उसमें invest. It's the peak of the earnings. But if you see the price to book value, it might be overvalued, sheerly overvalued. So in cyclical industries में जब भी price to earning बहुत कम होगा ना, price to book value will be sheerly high because that will reflect the company is not working with the fundamentals. So ideally, and we sell off when the price to earning is very high. Correct? उस टाइम तो खरीदना है क्योंकि उस टाइम the earning is very less, right? But the earning will come back. The earning is coming back. The earning is growing. The orders have started to kick in. Orders हैं, अब orders convert हो रहे हैं रेवेन्यू में। जब भी प्राइस टू अर्निंग कम होता है साइक्लिकल इंडस्ट्रीज का, इट मींस द ऑर्डर्स आर गेटिंग कन्वर्टेड टू रेवेन्यू। इट्स टाइम टू बाय, यू विल मेक मनी, बट वी इन्वेस्ट एट द टॉप ऑफ द साइकिल व्हेन द प्राइस टू अर्निंग इज वेरी लो। सो फॉर साइक्लिकल इंडस्ट्रीज द लॉजिक इज उल्टा। यू इन्वेस्ट व्हेन प्राइस टू अर्निंग इज हाई, you sell when price to earning is low. And many of the Nifty 50 companies have BFSI space and heavy industrial companies, चाहे रिलायंस हो, चाहे अदानी हो, चाहे हिंदुस्तान एरोनॉटिक्स हो। Correct? So we should much more look towards the price to book value much more rather than price to earnings, right? Our average market cap to GDP कितना है? Our average market cap to GDP has been around how much? Around 87%. But currently we are at 122%. It's also called as a Buffett ratio, right? It also indicates some kind of overvaluation, but earnings should be justified. Our average ROE for past 10 years has been 13.8%. Currently we're trading at 15%. Again, very good number, right? And here you get a sector wise understanding. देखो यहाँ पे like MSCI की बात भी करी है। Over the past 12 months, MSCI India has underperformed MSCI EM index, right? 5% की growth रही है towards MSCI India and 10% for MSCI EM. But over last 10 years, MSCI India index has outperformed MSCI EM index by 94%. Very good number. Also, one more data point. In price to earning term, the MSCI India index is trading at 78% premium to MSCI EM index. This number looks very high, 78%, but historically it has traded at 79% premium. Because India is a high growth country, it will always trade at a superlative valuation, at a superlative premium against MSCI EM index. So do not panic if you see the 78% number. It is normal. ठीक है? Then यहाँ पे ना if you see सेक्टर वाइज ब्रेकअप, ठीक है, सेक्टर वाइज दिया होता है। देखो मे में और निफ्टी 50 मिड कैप की ग्रोथ दी हुई है, कितना परसेंट बढ़ा, 6%, एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर मेंशन्ड हियर। यहाँ पे इफ यू सी ना कंपनी वाइज, आई वोंट कमेंट अपॉन कंपनीज, राइट, आई एम नो वन ऑथराइज्ड टू डू सो। कंपनीज का गाइस कैन डू देयर ओन रिसर्च। सेक्टर वाइज ब्रेकअप इज गिवन देयर। ऑटोमोबाइल्स इज करेंटली ट्रेडिंग एट अ 13% डिस्काउंट। 10-year average has been around how much? 28.1. Is currently trading at 24.15. Right? So basically what has happened, demand for tractors is very high. Demand for SUV segment is very high. Demand for passenger vehicles is fairly good. But overall, the four-vehicle sales have declined. The two-wheeler is starting to come back. Right? So tractor sales, we can get to see the demand for the rural consumption is reviving. Right? Export-focused companies can face some risk because of tariffs, but again, it won't be a major issue because everything will be priced in. And at the end, we just export 2% of GDP, right, to US. Private sector banks at 19% premium. Average valuation is 2.5x on price to book value multiple. I told the logic, never see price to earning multiple. This left-hand side, this table for the price to earning is incorrect. Look at price to book value only. Price to earning makes no logic for private banks or public banks or any company in the BFSI space. Correct? So it is again trading at an overvaluation, right? But the thing is, since the interest rates have come down now, the banking margins can get a hit because your loans will get repriced faster. The interest rates on loans will come down faster, and the interest rates on deposit come down with a lag. And the vice versa is also true when the interest rates rise in the market. When the interest rates rise in the market, the interest on loans rise first, and the interest rates on FDs rise later, and hence the bank make a good margin, a good NIM. But the vice versa is also true. In a falling interest rate environment, the interest rates on loans shall get priced first, and the interest rates on deposits will get priced later. So hence, the margins will get compressed. As a result, many of the private sector banks have also cut down their saving deposit interest so that they can survive this compressed NIM. But from third quarter, things will come on track. The third quarter of the FY26, things are expected to come back on track, right? Also, there were multiple regulations of the high quality liquid assets, right? For some private institutions, it's 50%, for some financial institutions, 100%, for some LLP and different thing. तो वहां पर भी अब बैंक्स के पास ज्यादा पैसा बच रहा है to lend, right? So again, that can also act as a buffer. I've talked about those HQLA norms, high quality liquid assets. पहले banks को like इतना इतना पैसा रखना पड़ता था as high quality liquid assets. Now the percentages have come down from 100% to 50% for various sectors. राइट? अब सिंस क्या होता है कि प्राइवेट बैंक्स में यू हैव मच मोर ऑफ रिटेल डिपॉजिट्स, राइट? तो अभी क्या होगा कि बैंक ने ऑलरेडी एक्स्ट्रा पैसा बॉन्ड्स में रखा हुआ था एंड ट्रेजरी में रखा हुआ था एज अ हाई क्वालिटी लिक्विड एसेट्स अप टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ 6%। अब बैंक के पास वो 6% एग्जिस्ट कैश है, राइट? अब दैट मनी द बैंक कैन यूज फॉर लेंडिंग। तो वो निम इफेक्ट होंगे बट बहुत ज्यादा से नहीं होंगे। सो दोज प्राइवेट बैंक्स हु हैड दोज 6% extra cash with themselves on account of those HQLA norms can benefit much more, right? Whereas public sector banks, they have a higher proportion towards your limited liability partnerships, HUFs वगैरह, तो वो थोड़ा सा वो सफर कर सकते हैं। बट ओवरऑल द थिंग इज कि देखो, एक और प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है तुम्हारा, मतलब कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स में they still have a higher credit to deposit ratio. So again, they have to garner more deposits. And also the thing is their unsecured book is also getting a hit. The microfinance institutions or unsecured book is also getting a hit. So asset quality is not a major concern, but a bit of concern in the private sector banks. But in case of public sector banks, which are again at an overvaluation, 63% premium, the credit to deposit ratio is low, right? Not as 189, 90%, it's as like 79.4%. Their asset quality book is also very strong, much better than private sector bank as of now. Deleveraging has taken place. And again, many of the loans are linked to the MCLR at the marginal lending rate, राइट? तो वो रेट तो वैसे ही कम रहता है, करेक्ट? तो उनको इतना मार्जिन कॉम्प्रेशन नहीं होगा। पर MCLR इज द बेस रेट कि उससे रेट पे द बैंक्स कांट लेंड लोन्स, राइट? रेपो रेट इज हायर देन द MCLR. Private banks keep many of the loans are linked to the repo rate and not the MCLR, right? So hence their margin will get compressed. But public sector banks already कम रेट पे दे रहे थे लोन MCLR में ही, राइट? जो रेपो रेट से ऑलरेडी कम था, करेक्ट? तो उनको एनीवे मार्जिन कॉम्प्रेशन से इतना हिट नहीं मिलेगा. NBFCs, again, the 16% premium. But one benefit the NBFCs get from a reducing interest rate environment is they borrow at a floating interest rate and lend at a fixed interest rate. So, if floating interest rate pe what they have borrowed, their borrowing cost has come down, and hence their NIMs will expand, especially for the auto-oriented NBFCs. So, वहाँ पे it can be really good. Capital goods, again, trading at a very high valuation, 27% premium. Cement at a 25% premium on EV to EBITDA basis. Why we use specific multiples, EV to EBITDA for this sector, price to book for this? I've told specific logics for that in my cohorts, in my YouTube videos. That data is there with you. वो logic समझो. सीमेंट में हम price to book value भी use कर सकते हैं. Consumer 2% premium पे है. So we can see your auto is at a discount, right? Your consumer almost at par. We can see the consumer demand rising. Consumer durables 25% premium पे है. Chemical, it's a comeback for chemicals now. Healthcare, where chemicals is also trading at a how much? 33% premium. Healthcare at a 16% premium. Infrastructure at 19% premium. Logistics at 15% premium. Media 33% डिस्काउंट, एंड मीडिया ने वैसे कुछ खास पैसे बनाया नहीं इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए. मेटल्स ऑलमोस्ट एट फेयर वैल्यूएशंस ऑफ 6.3 EV to EBITDA basis. Oil and gas 26% premium, very volatile sector, be very cautious towards investing into this. Real estate 20% premium. Retail is at a discount. Historical 10-year average is 85.3. It's currently trading at 76.4, right? Technology 14% premium. Telecom 15% premium on EV to EBITDA basis. Utilities 55% premium. So as of now, we can see the automobiles seem to be undervalued. Your consumer retail, right? Or simply your consumers, correct? So these seem to be good undervalued sectors. But your pharma, EMS, capital goods as a theme, banking for future after like Q2 onwards, they really seem good because earning में किसी में कुछ खराबी नहीं है from a long term perspective, right? तो इन सब चीजों का हमको ध्यान देना है. One thing I will tell you, if you even go to trend line, right? And if you see the earning growth, भी अगर तुम देखोगे ना, I'll just try to reload this page for you to make it fresh. ठीक है? तो ट्रेंड लाइन में ना, when you go to मार्केट्स पे क्लिक करते हो ना, you have this option of Q4 FY25 results declared in the results dashboard. You click on here, you get all this data point. ठीक है? Now this is based upon the operating profit and not the PAT. ठीक है? तो यहाँ पे मैं किसी भी सेक्टर इंडस्ट्री का देख सकता हूँ. इफ आई सी इट फॉर निफ्टी 500, लेट इट लोड. 11.7%. See, for every company now, one thing notice, your EBIT or EBITDA, earning before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, वाला part is higher for every sector, much more than the revenue. And ये चीज़ एक अच्छी चीज़ है. Correct. So Nifty 500 operating profit Q on Q growth for the F525, Q4 of the FY25 is 11.7%. Right? If you see for Nifty next 50 का 22%, very good number. निफ्टी 50 का बहुत कम रहा है, 6.9%. पैट तो बस 3-4% रहा है. If you see for Nifty small cap 250, Nifty small cap 250 has risen by 10.9%. Not a bad number. And if you see Nifty mid cap 100, it's 15.6%. Nifty 150 का भी approximately 15 to 16% ही रहेगा. Correct, like not major difference. So we can say mid cap is giving you much higher growth. Nifty next 50 has outperformed in terms of the operating profit, right? But Nifty mid cap 150 is giving you very nice growth. And यहाँ पे you can see sector wise also. Your automobiles if you see 4.2% की growth आई है. मैंने तो माइक्रो कैप भूल ही गया. लेट्स सी माइक्रो कैप ने कितना पैसा बनाया है इन टर्म्स ऑफ ऑपरेटिंग प्रॉफिट. 9.9%, even lesser than small caps. Correct. बैंकिंग एंड फाइनेंस अराउंड 10% रिटर्न बनाया था इफ यू सी. 14%. 14%. राइट. वेरी गुड नंबर. रैंडमली इफ आई सी इट फॉर एफएमसीजी, राइट, वो नेगेटिव में होना चाहिए. -6.1% नेगेटिव. इफ आई सी फॉर आईटी एंड सर्विस, सॉफ्टवेयर एंड सर्विसेज, इंटरनेट सॉफ्टवेयर एंड सर्विसेज, ये नंबर कुछ ऑड लग रहा है. इंटरनेट सॉफ्टवेयर एंड सर्विसेज, it is taking up a specific segment now. Wait. IT consulting and software. 6.8%. IT consulting and software is something that will encapsulate everything. ठीक है. So IT consulting and software 6.8%. So via this you can see यार कि कौन सा sector is giving you growth. Right? Companies पे I won't be commenting upon. But कौन से sector has seen the growth? Which market cap has given the maximum growth? Number of companies wise से भी compare कर सकते हैं. If I just go towards Nifty 500. Out of the 500 companies, right, 311 companies have declared a positive earning growth. Negative profit growth has been for 162 companies and neutral for 26 companies. Correct? Nifty small cap 250 भी अगर मैं देखूंगा, maximum companies have given you positive results. For Nifty 50 also 30 companies are positive earnings and 17 are negative. ठीक है. So this tool you can explore. अगर मैं पैड के बेसिस पे बात करूं, ये देखो, ये पैड के बेसिस पे है निफ्टी 50 का. ईयर ऑन ईयर ऑन ईयर इट हैज बीन 3.3% फॉर निफ्टी 50 रिपोर्टेड पैट, जिसमें से नॉन फाइनेंशियल्स हैज गिवन बेटर रिटर्न्स 6.8% एंड नॉन फाइनेंशियल एंड फाइनेंशियल्स हैव फॉलन डाउन बाय 3.5%. राइट. इफ यू सी निफ्टी मिड कैप में ईयर ऑन ईयर 28% ग्रोथ कम नहीं होती, जिसमें से मैक्सिमम हैज बीन फॉर नॉन फाइनेंशियल 33% and for the financials 18.7%. Nifty 500 year-on-year growth has been 11%, catering much more by the non-financials by 14% and financials by 5.3%. Right, so that is the thing. You know, a few of the companies' performance from September 24 to Feb, tak, they didn't go to negative or they were still above the benchmark. Right, you know the reason why? Because they added many of the defensive themes during that time frame. They added many of the banking companies. Right? And banking companies did not correct much. Most of EMS, capital codes, mid-cap IT, pharma companies corrected the most. Right? So just to show or just to have that outperformance over the benchmark, beat in the negative terms also, कि कम गिरे benchmark से, या beat even as a break-even trajectory, or beat even positive by some 0.1% even. They were very proud. The other fund managers' portfolios have gone down by 20%, 15%. They've gone down below the benchmark. They're not beating the benchmark, and we are benchmark positive. We have beaten the benchmark or fallen less than benchmark because you added defensive themes. तो गिरे ही नहीं ना. पर जब market ऊपर होगी, as we can see right now, the growth themes will come into account, and your portfolio will still be normal. You won't be getting much of return. But there's growth themes toward mid-cap space, mid-cap IT space, EMS, capital goods, telecom, China plus one, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, consumer tech, consumer discretion, high growth themes will really grow well, right? So that is the thing we need to focus on. एक लास्ट में ये शो करना चाहता था कि मॉर्गन स्टैनले की रिपोर्ट है. अब मॉर्गन स्टैनले इज अ बिग इंस्टीट्यूशन गाइस, राइट? कोई फालतू इंस्टीट्यूशन तो है नहीं. मॉर्गन स्टैनले, जेपी मॉर्गन, क्या बोल रहे हैं वो? द रिपोर्ट इज एज ऑफ June 2, 2025. लेटेस्ट रिपोर्ट में बता रहा हूँ. द सेइंग इक्विटीज अपेयर इनएक्सपेंसिव. कुछ सोच के ही बोल रहे होंगे. इक्विटीज अपेयर इनएक्सपेंसिव, राइट? इसके बेसिस पे ना वी टॉक अबाउट अ बिगर रेशियो, बॉन्ड इक्विटी अर्निंग यील्ड. तो हमारे पास टाइम कम है बिकॉज लॉन्गर वीडियोज यू डोंट प्रेफर, ये ऑलरेडी वीडियो बहुत लंबी होने वाली है. द थिंग इज, मैंने बियर रेशियो की बात करी है इन माई प्रीवियस वीडियो. तो बियर रेशियो को समझ लेना. बॉन्ड अर्निंग्स एंड इक्विटी अर्निंग्स. आई टॉक अबाउट स्प्रेड ऑल्सो, right? And the basis upon those numbers, it is indicating that equities are cheaper and buy equities and not fixed income. The market says it's time for fixed income, but it's time for equities and not fixed income based upon the bigger ratio. उस वीडियो को ध्यान से देखना. बहुत सब रीजंस दिए हैं, आई कैन शेयर द रिपोर्ट विद यू, जस्ट पिंग मी डायरेक्टली। ठीक है, बट ना यहाँ पे ना उन्होंने बहुत अच्छे कुछ ग्राफ्स बनाए हैं, एंड दिस ग्राफ्स वर समथिंग व्हिच आई आल्सो यूज्ड टू पर्सनली मेक लाइक ड्यूरिंग माय डेज इनटू एन इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक, लाइक व्हेन आई यूज्ड टू वर्क इन देयर। तो ऐसे ग्राफ्स उस टाइम मैं भी बहुत बनाता था, राइट। तो द थिंग वाज, कुछ मेजर मेजर चीजें अगर मैं तुमको दिखाऊं ना, इफ यू सी इंडियाज बीटा रिलेटिव टू द वर्ल्ड इक्विटीज इज लो। वर्ल्ड इक्विटी का बीटा कितना आ रहा है? अप्रोक्सीमेटली दर गोइंग टूवर्ड्स 1। Here, I'm not comparing index ka beta. I'm comparing the average beta of the world industries, right? MSCI AC World Index, right, with the MSCI India Index. Apna beta is come. At lesser risk, we are able to make more returns. So that is one metric, right? जिन्होंने बहुत अच्छा एनालाइज करा है, जो यूजुअली लोग चार्ट्स में नहीं डालते। हाँ, अपना बीटा भी कितना आ रहा है? टूवर्ड्स मोर ऑफ 0.2 0.3 एवरेज बीटा ऑफ ऑल दी कंपनीज इन इंडिया, ऑफ ऑल दी कंपनीज इन दी एमएससीआई इंडिया, राइट। अब एमएससी इंडिया में कितनी कंपनीज हैं? एनी आइडिया, एनीवन? You can get the list of companies also if you type in here MSCI India companies. List तो तुम्हें मिलेगी। How many are there? There are 157 companies. Name of companies also you can get. So 157 companies का average out beta is around 0.4 0.3. World AC index का कितना चल रहा है? Closer to 1. So हम कम बीटा, कम systematic. What is beta? What is systematic risk? How to calculate it? I've already told in my YouTube videos and my cohort. उसको रेफर करो। ठीक है, कम चल रहे हैं। देन और जो मुझे चार्ट दिखे अच्छे अच्छे, आई एम गिविंग यू वन थिंग टू ट्राई टू रीड अबाउट सेंसेक्स टू गोल्ड रेशियो एंड निफ्टी टू गोल्ड रेशियो। अगेन दैट इज ऑल्सो लाइक वन इंपॉर्टेंट मेट्रिक, एंड उसके बेसिस पे भी लाइक वी आर लुकिंग गुड। ये देखो, ऑन द राइट हैंड चार्ट वन इज योर बीएससी सेंसेक्स ईयर ऑन ईयर रिटर्न्स, and second parameter is gap between the real GDP growth and 10-year bond yield, right? So keep your BSE Sensex year on year returns as one parameter. Your second parameter is the difference between the real GDP and the 10-year bond yield. इन दोनों पैरामीटर, ये तीन पैरामीटर्स नहीं है। फर्स्ट इज अ स्टैंडअलोन पैरामीटर, सेकंड वन इज अ डिफरेंस का पैरामीटर, डिफरेंस ऑफ जीडीपी, रियल जीडीपी माइनस 10-year बॉन्ड यील्ड, सेकंड पैरामीटर। इन दोनों का डिफरेंस इज कमिंग क्लोजर, and whenever historically the difference has come closer, equity markets have outperformed, they have done well, and here you can see the difference is coming closer। ठीक है, ये ग्राफ भी तुम देख सकते हो, सब कुछ इसमें मेंशन करा है, बट ऑयल प्राइसेस एंड डिफरेंट थिंग्स। वेरी नाइस स्टार्ट, बिट कॉम्प्लेक्स, बट इफ यू नो हाउ टू रीड इट, इट कैन टेल यू एवरीथिंग अबाउट द मार्केट। ये देखो, करंट प्राइस टू बुक वैल्यू 3.9 टाइम्स चल रहा है। बेस्ड अपॉन इट, एवरेज ग्रोथ पोटेंशियल ऑफ निफ्टी 50, or not nifty 50, of MSCI India is 9.4%, right? Now the thing is our R square is 57. It means 57% of the returns are explained by beta in this case. 57% is market risk as of now, right? Which you cannot control ideally, देखा जाए तो। ठीक है, market cap to M2 ratio, where market cap to M2 ratio is coming closer to 40%. So what does market cap to M2 ratio tell you? If this ratio is high, it means your M2 is a measure of money supply. It's called as the broader money. इसमें सब आ जाते हो, सेविंग डिपॉजिट्स, योर चेकेबल डिपॉजिट्स, पोस्ट ऑफिस के डिपॉजिट्स आ जाएंगे। यू ऑल्सो हैव योर डिमांड डिपॉजिट्स एंड ऑफ कोर्स द करेंसी इन सर्कुलेशन। ठीक है, इफ दैट रेशियो इज लेस, इट मीन्स द मनी आउट ऑफ द M2 इज गोइंग मच मोर टुवर्ड्स द मार्केट कैप। So if this is more than 60%, 70%, it indicates a bubble. But it is coming down, it is coming down. तो थोड़ा सा भी बढ़ गया because the valuation started to come up once again. But from that 65% peak, it has come down to 38, 39%. And एक और रेशियो होगा और आपका M3 to M0 ratio. I don't know if it is here or not. M3 to M0. M3 again M3 इज अ मेजर ऑफ मार्केट सप्लाई, मार्केट मनी, यू हैव एवरीथिंग। उसमें तुम्हारा सेविंग डिपॉजिट के अलावा जो छोटे मोटे और डिपॉजिट्स हैं, टाइम डिपॉजिट्स वगैरह, ये सब भी आ जाता है, राइट। सो देयर इज अ रेशियो कॉल्ड एज M3 to M0 का रेशियो, M3 to M0 का रेशियो, दैट इज कमिंग अराउंड 6.5%, नीचे होगा। क्रेडिट ग्रोथ 11-12%। ये देखो M3 to MO, MO is the reserve money. It is just the currency in circulation and demand deposits. Not even demand deposits, more of currency in circulation, right? So your reserve money is approximately how much? 5 times, 5 to 6 times of M3. M3 is 5 to 6 times of the reserve money, right? So it means our money multiplier is going at a very good rate. Here, from reserve money, we can make a much more broader category of money, more than M2, correct? So ये भी एक है, बहुत अच्छे ग्राफ्स हैं, इसको भी मैं शेयर कर दूंगा, जस्ट पिंग मी पर्सनली, आई बी हैप्पी टू शेयर दीज थिंग्स विद यू। आरवी का ट्रेंड, एसेट टर्नओवर का ट्रेंड, ठीक है, एसेट टर्नओवर का भी अच्छा ट्रेंड आ रहा है, बढ़ रहा है, राइट। कॉर्पोरेट डेट एज अ परसेंटेज ऑफ जीडीपी इज रेड पोर्शन, 40-45%, राइट। गिरने के बाद बढ़ रहा है वापस, बिकॉज when the economy is rising, your corporate debt to GDP has to rise. Your profit to GDP is around 4.5% as of now. Your profit to GDP ratio, corporate profit to GDP ratio, again all time high. तो ये ग्राफ्स हैं, इनको समझो, इनको पढ़ो, आई विल शेयर दैट आल्सो विद यू। बट एज ऑफ नाउ इन नटशेल वी कैन से द ग्रोथ आउटलुक इज वेरी पॉजिटिव। But China was there 15 years, 20 years down the line, that Chinese decade as we call it, it's the India's decade, it's the India's growth story as of now. So best way is to think towards going for the mid cap space and then small cap and large cap, right? So यही मेरा अंडरस्टैंडिंग है एज ऑफ नाउ मार्केट को लेकर। बाकी नथिंग स्पेसिफिक, विल कीप ऑन कनेक्टिंग with new topics and like with new discussions. And if you like my channel, follow and subscribe the channel and press the bell icon to get continuous updates on markets, on investment banking into asset management and different electives and curriculums of investment banking or the asset management. I'm there for you. Okay, so see you soon up to the next video. So subscribe and press the bell icon. Thank you so much. Bye bye.